sneaky ways to get someone to moderate.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so it's a couple minutes after 1. I'm sure we'll have a few stragglers, but welcome to the Evolving Writing Process panel. So if that's what you're here for, great.
If not, get out.
No, stay, please. We want you here.
And learn something new.
Exactly. We'll just start with introductions as usual. We'll go right here.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jody Lidnaya. I write science fiction and fantasy books mostly. I edit a few anthologies here and there, and I teach writing. So I guess I'm in the right place.
Yeah. My name is Thomas A. Fowler. I'm a broadcast and digital producer in an ad agency by day. By night, I write science fiction primarily. A couple of the credits to my name, I've got an independent film, The Code, Legend of the Gamers, that you can actually watch and stream on IMDb, Internet Movie Database. And then I've also got a couple short stories published. I'm currently shopping my first novel to agents while I am writing the second.
Good for you.
My name is Josh Vogt. I'm a fantasy author and full-time freelance writer. So I've got my debut novels coming out this May. I've got a couple dozen short stories published in a wide variety of markets and across many genres. And then, yes, I do a lot of corporate copywriting, and that is both my day and my night job, and it all kind of weaves together from there.
I'm Van Aaron Hughes. I just do science fiction and fantasy short stories. One of my stories is a winner in the Writers of the Future contest, which is a great thing for new writers. Based on the topic, I suspect some of you are aspiring writers. So if you don't know about the contest, you should find out. Feel free to talk to me about it. I've had a story in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. I have another one coming out there later this year, among a few other writing credits. The one coming out soon is really weird, so I'm just to see what people think of it.
Okay, so the writing process. So let's start with a very easy question. Do you have a concrete process, and can you sum it up in just like, what is your process when you sit down to work on a story? And do you have a process before you sit down to work on the story?
You're just ready to go as the moderator. That's
awesome. Jody.
Fantastic. When I am, every day I get up, I feed the cat, I put my cocoa on, and I sit down and I open the computer and I start working. If I'm starting something new, my process is this. If I start with a basic idea, and then I start to write down into a computer file every single thing that I can think of about that. And as I start to get into the idea, scenes start to suggest themselves, characterizations start to suggest themselves, setting, and by the time I'm a few paragraphs in, I'm already writing the story. But when I'm writing a book, the process of getting all the information down is longer, but I still end up writing scenes and character descriptions and other things, complete with dialogue, and then I could go back and move things around until they're in the right order and then flesh out the various portions. I don't write chapter by chapter as many people do. I cannot tell you which chapter something is going to appear in. When I break for chapters, I write chapter without a number because I go back. It's one of the very last things I do before I finish writing a book is to go in and put the chapter numbers in. Because sometimes I move them around. It depends on how the timeline is working out. I guess that makes me a pantser.
You're very fluid.
It sounds like it works for me.
Yeah.
I've written nearly 50 books. I've written over 120 short stories, so I've done this a lot, and that works for me. What distracts me, I have already found out, is if there's something interesting going on, my husband is on an interesting phone call. Or if something is happening in the house, like the carpets are being cleaned, or we're about to have a handyman come in, and I'm 4 days from finishing a book. So I'm going to the library early in the morning, and I'm going to stay there until it closes while they are working on my house, because distractions are fatal. And William Forster, who writes military science fiction, alternate history kinds of things, said, the anticipation of an interruption is as bad as the interruption itself. And he's right. We talked about this. He's right. If I know that somebody is coming to the house at 1 o'clock, I cannot get it together and really concentrate and really delve into things because I know I'm going to be interrupted at 1 o'clock. So I try very hard to keep those minimalized, as few as possible. My husband has a tendency to leave town for the last week anytime I'm finishing a book. we've done this for years, is should I leave town now, he says. Because I'll literally stay up 20 hours, and I'll just sleep long enough to get the sleep toxins out, and then I'll go back to the book, and then sometime I will write the end, and then I'll go in and tell him about it. So that's kind of my process.
Yeah, I can go. I'm actually much less fluid, and it just kind of shows you where you have to kind of adapt the system to whatever works for you. For me, I'm incredibly organized. My first novel, I just knew what I wanted the setting to be. I knew I wanted it at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, but I knew I didn't want to do a submarine novel. So then I went into the research process and learned about turbines that they were starting to put underwater. And that kind of gave me my setting of a renewable energy station, so that I learned everything I could about renewable energy. I toured a wind turbine farm to learn about the engine systems and how they capture the energy. I spent time on a decommissioned submarine for about 3 hours, bumping my head, tripping over stuff. And so that way it kind of informed setting. And then I started fleshing out the characters as to who would need to be there. So I said, well, they need some energy analyst specialists, they're going to need engineers, one for probably the turbines, one for the station itself. They're going to need a safety engineer, medical technician, etc. And then from there, I actually thought of my ending. I'm one of those writers who I have to know when they finish a story, how are they going to feel, and what are they going to take with them. So I actually thought of my ending, and I thought, how am I going to get to that point? And so I outlined the book several times, and then I started writing, upon which a lot of my outlined ideas either went away because I thought of something cool or new, and did that a few more times. And so I'm very much an outline kind of person. For my writing process too, I've got a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old. So the anticipation is really bad, because some nights the bedtime routines go really bad. And so I spend the whole night like, well, there's no point in writing because I'm still be in there helping to get one of them to sleep in 5 minutes. But thankfully they're sleeping better right now. We're coming up on teething with the young ones, so I'm getting ready. But the way I actually work now is I have a daily word count, and it is every day, 7 days a week. I don't give myself any days off. Only way I get a day off is if I work ahead. So if I work ahead, then yeah, great, I get a day off. I can go play video games or something like that. And the way I know how I'm doing on my word count is I actually have a calendar about this big for a month. And what I have on there are color-coded Post-its, you know. But the colors actually all have correlations. There's writing deadline check-ins, that's once a week. I make sure I'm at 7,000 words, because that's 1,000 words a night. I also have a weekly blog post, so I have a color coding for a blog post. And then I have red, which is deadlines. So if there's a short story, anthology that I want to submit.
Once I start looking at my email, it's probably all I'm going to get done. So I try to push that as late as possible. If I'm expecting an important one, then I will look at it. But otherwise, might wait until I'm kicking off my regular work day. I'm trying to stay with the project.
Yeah, we have a quick question.
When you're talking about interruptions, how do you, if you're aspiring, get that point across that this is important? You know, I know you're working. She acknowledged you were working, but there might be other people with other people in their lives going, that's not work.
Okay. If you don't take it seriously, they won't either. And you have to really come down on them and say, no, this is my work time between 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock every evening. And I'm not going to do anything else. And it's very hard to teach children to do this, because you have to say to them, do not interrupt mommy. And you really have to be careful how you phrase this. Because if you say, do not interrupt mommy unless the house is on fire, they will make it so. But what you have to do is, you know, mommy's going over here now. Okay, I know it's hard, but watch TV or read a book or do this for this period, and mommy will be back with you at 6 or 5:20 or whatever interval child mind space can accomplish. You may not be able to write a lot all at once with small children. The older children should respect the process because you take it seriously. If you break your own rule and say, okay, you know, all right, I'll take you to the mall at 5:30. You're breaking your own rule. No, I'm sorry, I can't take you between 5 and 6. I can't do it. You can go at 4:45.
I have a different problem. I have a father that I live with at the moment, and is would constantly come in, oh, I just thought of this,
Mhm.
and, oh, did you get this done? And then later on be
You
like,
have to do what I did with my mom. You really have to say, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you right now, slam.
Take like a whiteboard and put it outside your room
Mhm.
and have them write
Do
notes
not
for
disturb,
you
yeah.
on there.
Have-
And just
have
say,
them write his
this is
messages.
where, if you have an idea, write it here. We'll talk about it later.
You get no contact with me between this hour and this hour. I'm sorry, I love you. This is not about you. And if contact with me, constant contact with me is all that tells you that I love you, then we have another problem that we need to discuss. But this is my time to write, and this is what I'm taking, and no, I will not talk to you during that period, and do not come in here. If you have to lock the door for a while, do it.
But none of this, I think, works until you impress on the people in your life that your writing is important to you, it's a priority. Because otherwise if they don't think of that as an important thing to spend your time on, that barrier has to be broached.
But tell us about your ceremony.
Ceremony for me, well, I mean, because I have a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old and I work a 9 to 5, my writing time is basically completely locked in the sense that I work 9 to 5 and those hours are a little up for interpretation since it's advertising, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But, and then it's come home, get everybody fed, get everybody, you know, hang out, make sure we enjoy our evening as a husband and father. So I actually, the kickoff is basically when everyone's asleep. And so, and basically typically I am very music based in writing. So I actually create playlists based on where I'm at. If I know what the emotion needs to be for a specific chapter, I'll actually play a song that I've designated for that chapter to almost kick me into gear. If I'm still in the early process, sometimes it'll be almost actually like more music that's better for the gym. Then it is actually writing music, but it just gets me in the mindset. And a lot of it too is also like with the calendar, it was just establishing routine. For me, because I read the statistic that said it takes 10 weeks for something to become habit. And that's why there can be things that go wrong. Your daughter has to have surgery, sprains her knee, something like that, and you are stuck taking care of them for a week and it derails you. But the thing is that because it was embedded into my brain as routine, any disruptions to that routine, okay, they happen, fine. Life happens, you can't possibly accommodate or plan for everything that happens, but the second you get over that hurdle or that little exception, you're back in it because it is ingrained in your schedule. I wake up at 6 a.m., I get the dog taken care of, I do a quick 20 to 30 minute workout, I get ready for bed, for the day, you know, start cooking breakfast for the girls, pack my lunch, go to work, come home, bedtime routines, kick the music in, write, wait until my brain shuts down or I reach my word count, and then repeat. And because it's and because it's dogs and kids, it's 6 a.m. every day, no matter what. It's 7 days a week. Every now and then the girls will let me sleep in on a Saturday or something.
Do you write during your lunchtime? Do you ever write during your?
Not advertising. I don't get freedom.
That's just 3 months.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, because my job specifically, I work on every client in the agency.
Oh, okay. No, you're not free.
So, yeah, I actually tried, and even when I left to like go to a coffee shop or like a sandwich place for lunch, they find me. So it was one of the, I surrendered. So.
When they put the GPS tracker on you.
Right.
Yeah, well, they give us our cells.
It was the ear tag.
Yeah.
The ear tag.
Yeah. So
It is a problem in general because so many writers in this field have another job. They work during the day.
But we all have some other form of support. Really.
Right, but and there's been an evolution in the workplace where more and more you're expected to be on call all the time. And you know how do you get that block of time you need to make sure you do the writing and get your word count?
well, and that's one thing with advertising I'm very strict on. I don't answer emails on the weekends, and once I'm home, I'm home. Because there are a lot of people at that ad agency who do exactly that, and they don't have a free life, and that's where I actually do say, like, place better be burning, or there better be a client who's ready to call it quits with us. Otherwise, don't. That is one area
And you've been able to hold to that, so that's
Yep.
good.
The thing is that in order to be productive, to actually write a book, my husband and I figured this out while we were talking to this nice young woman in Jamaica who wanted to write a book. If you write one sheet of notebook paper every single day, 250 words, in a year you'll have a book, 90,000 word book. You will have a completed manuscript, viable, long enough to sell. But, and during the rest of your day, you can be thinking about what you're going to be putting on that single piece of paper. All day long, you can be working on that, and then you can fill up that piece of paper in 15 minutes. All you need is a block of time, short enough for the water to come to a boil and make some tea. If you can get that short interval of time to write your one page, and if you can keep writing after that, great. If nothing else, set a kitchen timer. Give yourself 15 minutes a day. Write 250 words.
I don't have too much of a ceremony. I'm mostly just making tea and getting on my treadmill and that sort of stuff. Okay, so question. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. You had
What's up?
Have you ever found, there's a lot of people who write books about writing books.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever found one to be particularly practical in its content? Not inspirational, like, oh, I'm going to write a book after reading this book, but like something that's really profoundly been helpful.
I feel like
And
most.
can you give us the bibliography?
I feel like most process books are based on what worked for that particular author, and
Sure.
you can't go in expecting the whole process that they lay out to work for you. I have found that my process has come from cobbling it together from a dozen or 100 other processes and experimenting. Does this work for me? Does this work for me? No, and discarding. It's something that you develop over the years. The one thing that was very foundational for me was not a book, but it was it's something free online. You can actually, I link to it on my website, jaredvogt.com. It's called the snowflake process. And it's basically this very organic way of building out an idea until you're ready to write the novel. You start with a sentence, the sentence becomes a paragraph, the paragraph becomes a page, you get a synopsis, you break it down. It's this very step-by-step process. And I don't do all the steps now. I've figured out that there are some that are extraneous for me, and I've added things to it that help me. But that was one of the things that I would recommend if you were looking for something to start.
Techniques of the Selling Writer by Dwight Swain,
Also
University of
excellent.
Oklahoma Press.
Yes.
He was an instructor at the Clarion Workshop, and he listened to everybody else's teaching at the Clarion Workshop, which is a noted science fiction fantasy writers workshop, a residential program. And it is available. It has been studied in print ever since it was written.
That's a good one.
Another group of books that are Techniques of the Selling Writer by Dwight Swain, SWAIN. You can buy it through Amazon, and probably buy it through the U of O Press, and they'll be thrilled to get a direct order. Also I'm trying to remember his first name, Blake Snyder, Save the Cat.
I have that, yeah.
Okay, the Save the Cat books, you need the third one too, because when he tells you finale, and that's kind of a block of undifferentiated information, it's not until the third book that he says, well, the finale is also divided into 5 sections. But it is a good way of structuring a novel, and it gives you an idea of what might be missing from a tale.
Now, Save the Cat's more like it's geared towards screenplay writing.
However,
It's the
Todd
same structure.
McCaffrey and I went to a program operated by a fiction writer named Joseph Brody, who had adapted the Save the Cat books to writing novels.
Yeah.
And she taught a 2-day seminar, and the two of us sat in on this, and it's huge fun.
Yeah.
And she had us go through what Snyder described as beats. You know, this is your opening image. You know, she's thinking filmically, but I was a film major, so it worked very well for me. Your closing image, and in between are the presentation of the quest, the refusal of the quest, so on and so forth, and telling you what each of these pieces means. And then Snyder goes over various films, various movies that use particular outline structures, use particular tropes in each one of them to show you, oh yeah, that's where that appeared, and that's where that appeared, okay, and that's where this appeared. And the funny thing is that in most fiction, they often come about the same point, because that's the way that an arc of fiction works. To have a beginning, middle, and end, you need to have these elements and presentation of certain things, and each main character will have its own story arc. That's another thing that you have to keep in mind. So, take the Harry Potter books. Harry's story is one. of it. Hermione has another arc, but it's a minor one. And of course, Voldemort has an arc that you have to follow, or whatever the antagonist is for the time, like Gilderoy. Thank you.
Yeah, Umbridge too.
Yes, and you have all of these people who need to be kept in mind for the outline that you're presenting. And this is incredibly helpful if, even for someone like me, I can come along and say, all right, something's missing here. I don't want to go through this part yet. This part is not ready to happen yet. The timeline is not. I might look at the beat sheet and say, oh yes, that's right. That would go nicely here. Because it is a natural process. We tell stories in a certain way. We build up the crisis. We build up to a midpoint when things seem as if they're going to go terribly wrong or terribly right, and then things start to change. So those are interesting books to look at.
Thank you.
Yeah. And looking at the classic sort of arc of refusal, threshold, mentor and stuff, the writer's journey is also really good.
Oh yes.
I can't remember the author's name right now, but it's based on Joseph Campbell's mythology that was applied basically for the entire Star Wars, first Star Wars movie. I mean, you can look at that. Yeah, exactly. And that really, it talks about the classic journey in terms of stages, in terms of where the hero's at, but it also talks about the archetypes of traditional mythology and such too. Yes, thank you. And then, I mean, for me, my calendar system was actually adopted out of our ad agency. We actually brought in some freelance creative for a full integrated campaign, and the color system was actually for our different projects. We had TV, web, digital, radio, everything, and so they were color-coded that way, and I actually just sort of was like, I like this. And you know, so it's one of those things I even, one I forgot was even, I have a green, and that's actually for life. When I need to like do like I have a monthly financial assessment to see how we're doing, and it's also like bill paying and stuff like that. Like I actually have that worked in because what I'll do is I'll actually just knock those out before I start writing, so you don't have to worry about it. You get your head out of the space of like, oh crap, I forgot to pay Excel. Yeah. Or you know, like, oh damn it, I forgot to transfer funds for the month or whatever.
Got my child at school.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't get that detailed.
A story about that about my husband's father, but I'll tell that later.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's kind of nice too with the writing process to have those laid out for me because it gets them out of my mind, and I also know when I need to worry about it. That way I know when I need to worry about that. You know, i.e. the real life stuff, and then when I can actually go into the worlds that I can go.
And then accepting that you're going to have to go back over what you wrote and maybe rewrite it later. Keep going. Just keep going. If you think that you're writing journal, write something else. Start a new story. If you find that you're doing something destructive to the project you're currently working on, write something else. Or go do your taxes. Do something that doesn't require creative thinking.
I'll do it real quick. Because I'm a freelancer, I have clients. I can't call my clients a distraction because they pay my bills. But it is a thing of like, that is why I try and block out time for clients. But sometimes even that doesn't work because I work with clients on an international scale. So sometimes I have to time shift and talk to somebody in Australia or in China or something like that in the evening when I would normally be working on my own stuff. I have to be aware of that. I have to know that's going on and say, okay, I'm going to have a meeting tonight, so I should get my personal stuff out of the way beforehand. But aside from that, the other big distraction for me is social media. I love being connected on Twitter and all that kind of stuff, and I can spend hours on that. And so it is that thing. I have tools that I use to block that from me preemptively. If I know I want to get into the writing mode for a few hours, I have software that will cut off my internet connection or will cut off my ability to access certain websites. I think I mentioned them in another panel. Freedom and Antisocial are two different pieces of software that they're cheap to get and they're easy to use. And when I have those on, I am far more productive than when not, because it's not an option. All I have to do is write. That's the only thing I can do. So that's the way that I deal with it.
Oh, I can find many more ways to procrastinate than just social media.
Oh yeah, those are that's
And one thing I do too is that like if I can sense that the girls are a little uneasy and I know that like I'm gonna probably be you know, trying to get disrupted with like sleep routines, a lot of times then I'll just try to like shift to blog posts, something that I can write pretty quick. It won't be like, all right, I need to like focus on this massive chapter with this incredibly cathartic ending, you know, because it's not going to happen. You know, like, and if the girls are completely peaceful and asleep, then yeah, let's do it. But then I'll actually focus on writing on some blog posts, or maybe like hop back to a short story or something like that. Like work on something where you can kind of, I don't want to use the word be less invested, because I mean, I've worked really hard to get my blog posts, but where almost you can have a 250 word post, so therefore it's not going to take you a dedicated focused hour. And because you know the content of that blog post, you can step away, nurse, sleep, sing, you know, get them back down, come back, finish that up, maybe edit it, make sure you add your hyperlinks, you know, do some tests, you know, and stuff like that. And that way I'm still hitting my nightly word count, but it's adapting to the scenario, you know. And that's where you go back to it as well. Like, you know, I have a rough idea of when my next book is going to be done. If I don't hit that deadline, it doesn't mean my life is over. It just means that things happened and I wrote other stuff, because I'm still hitting my nightly word count, but I'm just writing something else, but I'm still writing. And that's the key.
Actually, we had a question over here then.
Sorry, I was saying, one thing I found with my writing process is I've sort of tried different ways so the way that works for me is I kind of have
That's my distraction.
No, I'll kind of have Zen moments where I will sort of blitz out like 7,500 words in one night, and I'll be like, this is all really good, and then I'll try and force myself to sit down and I'll write like 3 paragraphs of utter rubbish that I just end up spending the next day trying to fix. So I know that doesn't work for me. The problem is, the days off I have, I find it really easy to derail completely and just be like, and just spend a week without writing. So what would you say is the best way of sort of dealing with that situation, forcing yourself not to derail while you're taking that breathing room, basically?
I would say keep a minimum of, you know, you don't have to do 7,500 words a day, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But like, you know, it's like 250 words a day, that's not that hard.
No,
and even if you're just doing a little something every day, even if it's not fiction, it's a blog post. If it's, maybe you sit down and just write a little vignette, or you just type out a page of notes, you know, so long as you are doing something, keeping you in that mindset of tippy tappy tappy. That's like tiny whiny wiggly wobbly. Tippy tappy tappy. Yeah, I think that habit forming pattern. You know, I write every day, but some of it's web copy, some of it's email, some of it's blog, some of it is my fiction. It's all.
But you're doing something, and a big part of doing something is you're not doing other things. So you're not on the internet, you don't have the TV on.
Oh, I'm on the internet all the time.
I have a solitaire game that runs in behind my, right? And I'll go and play a few hands, and then I'll come back. And sometimes when I'm trying to think of something, I'll run through several games, but it's mindless.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll do a few hands of Canfield and then go back to my manuscript, because this is a self-contained thing.
Yeah, and sometimes doing a reset is what is needed.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a game at home. It's called Dynasty Warriors on the PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
If anybody's, I mean, you know, that's a button masher.
Yeah.
Like it is not an intelligent game. You just choose your guy, you go in, you slaughter 1,200 like people in ancient China. But it's great because
I'm in person.
Wow.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, it's a mindless game. So I just go down, I conquer one territory, reset. I got out of my head, I got out of my little funk, and then I can go back and go, so.
So I guess I would, direct this question to you, Jody Lynn, since you publish so many books. Have you ever, because I've read like Stephen King would write something and then put it in a drawer and come back and look at it in 6 months. Have you ever started a book and got quite a bit done on it, and then it got put away for one reason or another, and then you came back to it a significant period of time later?
Actually, yes. I've just recently done that. In fact, I wrote a book called The Magic Touch, which was about fairy godparents. And recently, I was asked by Mike Resnick to write a novella, and an apprentice of mine would write a novella that is either prequel or sequel to it. And I gave him some ideas, and I said, and I've also got these series that I wrote a long time ago that I would happily go back to, you know, if you chose to do this instead. Well, Mike likes anything that's set in Chicago, and the magic touch is. So I went back and I reread the book, and I had outlines for more things. The publisher, frankly, did not understand humor. I wanted to be kind about this, but she really didn't get humor. So she didn't understand, didn't give a good push to the book initially, and didn't want any more of them. But I had always planned to write more. I had outlines. I had them sitting there. They were waiting. So the second of them became the extended novella for this project, and I was perfectly happy to do that. I also have a couple of projects that mean a great deal to me, and when I started to write the outlines for them, I realized I wasn't ready to write them yet. So I put them aside, and they're waiting for the day when I feel that it's time, and I know the day will come. I'm probably ready for a couple of them now, but I wasn't then. So yes, absolutely, you can pick them up again. If you have written enough of in your notes and side notes and interlinear notes and things, so that you can pick up the mindset you had then, you can go back to it. If you suddenly look at it and say, I don't even remember the person who wrote this, then put it aside and it's dead. But I do know a lot of people who start something, write a lot of it on it, and then they hit what I call three-quarter book syndrome, which is where you say, this is a piece of dirt. This is the worst thing that has ever been written by anybody. I should burn this. It means that I need to go away from it for a little while. You know, a couple hours, maybe a few days, and then come back to it and say, what's wrong that's making me stay there? You know, what's fundamentally wrong here? It probably means I need to go back and unknot something in an earlier chapter. And then I can go ahead and finish the story. I wrote, as kind of a joke, a 13-step sequence to writing a book, and three-quarter book syndrome was one of them. But after that, then you hit the straightaway. And then you write, because you've already done all your research. You've already created all your characters. It's that knotty space where a lot of people walk away from a project and never come back to it again, because they're not willing to sort of look at it and say, what's wrong with it?
Well, for me, go ahead.
I was going to say, my story that was a winner in the Writers of the Future, I had started writing 20 years earlier.
I believe that.
And I like the setting a lot. It's set on a planet that has had a global religious conflict, and it's not geographical. The two religions coexist everywhere, so it was just devastating to the whole world. And I like this setting a lot. Couldn't find the right story to bring it out, and I tried to write and stop, put it away. A few years later, I'd come back, try, put it away, and then like 5 years ago, I was at the bar mitzvah of a friend of my son's. And the rabbis talking about their ark, where the
about him. So I called it the Oriental Institute, and the archivist, whose name, by the way, was Chuck Jones, poor man, because he's absolutely nothing like the cartoonist, said, well, the right of kingship is in this book, but then there's this thing over here you might look at, and then there's this other book over here, and by the time I got there, I had a stack of books this high waiting for me, and he was on fire to tell me other stuff, because it's the people that you get the details.
Yeah.
They are the greatest resource in the world, because when you have learned how to do something, like you going to law school, for example, or Josh working for the advertising agency, they expect you to learn how to do it, and then they expect you to do it, but no one ever asks you how you know what you know. So it's terrific to go in and ask people, because you're getting the information and they're getting a chance to air their education, which they never do.
Well, and the thing is too, is they know that when you're open about the whole process, they know that that info is going into a book. And I'm going to send them a copy of it, and I'm going to say thank you that you were a part of this.
You're in the acknowledgments. Thank you.
Yeah, and they're going to be in the thank you section, and they're going to be able to talk about that for the rest of their lives. So.
At Writers of the Future, we all wrote a story in 24 hours. And one thing you had to do was talk to a total stranger for half an hour, put that person in the story. But they said, you can't tell them you're a writer, because that's too easy. Anybody will talk to you if they think you're a writer.
I had a few writer friends back in Britain actually, who after I came here the first time a few years ago, loads of them were asking me like, what's life like for an average American out there? Like, you've spent time there. What's it like out there?
Do you know any average Americans?
Yeah, that's one thing I said actually. There's no such things. But it was one of those things. If anyone's got a story to tell, then it's worth hearing.
So we are at the end of our time. Thank you all very much.
Yeah.